Wake up, get ready, time to shine, it's your day. Yeah. Join team together, making dreams come true.
Thank you again, Dan. Definitely appreciate the intro. And thank you to everybody for registering today. I've attended plenty of conferences like this. Been fortunate to even moderate some speakers in the past. So when I was nominated by a respected peer in the industry, thank you, David Marr, and asked to think about like what topic I would want to cover, what I'm passionate about. First off, I was honored. Second, pretty damn nervous, but I had ultimately jumped at the chance and settled on adaptive leadership, managing an evolving landscape. So before we get into some of the specifics, I want to give a quick intro to me. So who is this guy? Well, on the personal front, was born, raised, and still live actually in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. I did a little 4-year stint down in Indianapolis while I attended Butler University for college. Go Dogs. Let's not talk about their basketball record this year. I'm married to my wife, Tina, excuse me, for the last 16 and a half years, and we have 3 daughters together, left to right in the picture there. It's Kyla, Ashlyn, and Adeline, and they are 13, 11, and will turn 9 this summer, respectively. On the professional front, I started my career in sales right out of college at CDW, but shifted into TA about a year and a half later. I've got a total of 19 years experience, 13 of which has been in various leadership or management capacities, and 12 of that has been as a player coach. Currently, most recently, I was actually at AbbVie on a contract, so big biopharma company, had multiple responsibilities there, but I am currently, like a lot of our TA peers on the market, looking for my next TA leadership role. And when I'm not on the job hunt, some of the things I enjoy doing, spending time with the family. I enjoy a nice craft beer like some of the other presenters, it sounds like. So shout out to Beer on the Wall in Arlington Heights. I'm a big sports fan and I love cooking. The process, it's soothing, I find it relaxing, and I think I make a pretty damn good pizza. So I had to provide a picture with evidence there just to be safe. And what exactly were we talking about? Well, I'm going to cover why it's important to discuss adaptive leadership at this moment. We'll also distinguish between management and leadership. I'll provide a foundation with best practices to allow you to become or enhance your current adaptive leadership capabilities. We'll quickly cover some communication style cues and indicators that are beneficial so you can quote unquote speak your employees' languages and connect with them more effectively. And it sounds like we're leaving Q&A for the end of the day, so we'll hop into that a little bit later. So why this topic? For me, it all starts with the current market conditions. I think it's been a little uncertain, like what are the indicators, which way are we leaning, which way is it going to go? But it is very clear that we are a couple years into the great stay. And some reports indicate that we may be on a cusp of another wave of resignations. Now, I don't expect that it's going to be as volatile as the great resignation we encountered. I know, Steve, you talked about earlier today, a couple years ago, but multiple reports are showing that employees are actively looking for their next role. In fact, 2/3 or 66% of employees feel stuck and aren't as motivated as they once were. I'd love to check in the chat quickly. Who out there, and I know the data might be a little bit skewed, but who out there is currently looking for a new opportunity? See a few responses. Not surprised to see that. And again, companies have benefited from these high retention rates over these last few years, and they could be up for a rude awakening. Once the market shifts and individuals are given more opportunities, they're going to explore them. And in large part, attrition can be avoidable. A lot of times, the decision is actually directly tied to an individual's manager. I think I might have a couple former employees here on the line. So excuse me. So I don't want to embarrass myself or shoot myself in the foot, but again, want to get some reactions. If you're in the crowd, have you ever left an opportunity because of your direct report manager? A lot of yes is popping up, 100%. Yes, yes, yes. No surprise there. One Gallup report I found stated that 42% of employees that had voluntarily left their job within that previous year tied that decision back to their manager or decisions that their manager had influence over. And we as people leaders can ground ourselves in certain practices, maintain specific foundational skills. That way, we're more likely to retain those employees and actually have them perform at a higher level. I'm hopeful what I share today will help empower the people leaders in the audience, as well as those that are striving to become one, to really achieve those optimal results. And as I mentioned, it really starts with identifying the difference between leadership and management. Management, at its core, it's the task-oriented, the planning, the organizing, the directing individuals in order to achieve specific outcomes. It's the supervisory oversight, the day-to-day operations. Rob, I think, talked a lot about sports. In sports, it's the blocking and tackling. For leadership, it's more with the stronger communication and the ability to influence. It's the schemes, it's the strategy, it's motivating and inspiring employees. It's outlining the vision for the future. And ultimately, it's more empowering for that employee, and they'll get more out of it. And again, be able to produce at a higher level. Amber discussed this a bit earlier too, but in times when we're all being asked to do more with less, people leaders need to be able to balance both that management as well as leadership capability in order to get the best results. Some of the things that I've found to be effective over the years, it all starts with communication. Again, there's been this common theme throughout the presentations today. Somebody else talked about active listening. And I think I, like a lot of other managers early in my career, struggle with this a bit. You feel like you have to be the source of all knowledge. So in meetings, you're trying to be over informative, you're over detailing, and it likely did more harm than good for my employees. When it comes to that, I've learned later on, obviously, you got to listen. So sit back, let them drive the conversation, let them drive many of the topics. That way, they're going to get more from the combo. And you have to facilitate or create a safe space where the team is going to be comfortable sharing and you will be able to actively listen. I personally like to set a regular cadence with individuals, either weekly, but no more than biweekly for my one-on-ones, and have it at the start of the week. Having it at the start of the week, in my opinion, allows you to hear about what are the challenges they're anticipating facing that week? What are some of the things that they might be encountering, and are there course corrections that need to be made so they have time to work against it? I also like to ensure that I'm not canceling on my team members. It is, again, it's time for them. It's not really as much time for you. And if you're canceling, it might come off as you just don't have time for them. You don't care as much. And that can definitely be detrimental to trust. Now, for team meetings, I think in every other week or thrice weekly cadence is going to be more than sufficient. In those meetings, you're going to want to cover topics about the broader business, various updates, and do your best to involve team members. Talk about it a little bit later here when we discuss trusting and empowering and developing your employees, but having them involved is going to be better for the broader audience. Now, in both of these settings, it's really important to maintain a structure. So request an agenda from your direct reports when you're going into a one-on-one. Send an agenda out prior to your team meeting. And pro tip, try to keep it all in OneNote or whatever AI note taker you're leveraging, because that way you'll have a running tally of topics, potential list of to-dos. You can also call back to specific topics that are most important to that individual. And again, AI note takers, I don't have any specific recommendations today. I'm sure the audience could chime in with what they've been using, but being able to have something that allows you to be more attentive and not just taking notes is clutch. And in both of these settings, it's imperative to ensure you're creating a dialogue. I had one manager who had a really effective but really simple leading question to every single dialogue. And it's just, what do you have for me today? Or what do you want to discuss? And that way I felt empowered to elevate the specific topics that were most important to me. And I know them as a leader, they would also have topics. And I, as a leader, when I'm running my one-on-ones, will have topics I want to cover. But it's more important to let the individual lead the discussion. They're once again going to get more out of it that way. And as you're creating the dialogue, don't be so quick to give an answer. And it goes back to the active listening piece. You want to provide guidance. You want to be able to be that source. But at the same time, if you probe further and ask them, like, what do they think the appropriate action is, or what's the best path forward, they're going to get more out of it. And therefore, you're building a dialogue versus a one-way conversation. And a lot of these conversations are going to be centered around goal creation and tracking. A big reason why you want to start the year with very clear and obtainable goals is you are then able to follow up on those on a frequent basis. In the meetings, elevate their performance data against where they're supposed to be. Are they falling behind? Are there reasons they feel they're falling behind? And what are those blockers that you could potentially help keep them address them in order to help them get back on track? And on the flip side, if somebody's performing at a high level, show that appreciation when results are achieved. There's not going to be a one size fits all. We talked about drivers earlier, and I'll quickly highlight that a little bit later too. But certain individuals are going to look for recognition in different ways and look for those cues that resonate with that person. So when they are achieving something, you give them that reward and they get that little boost of ego and energy, and they're going to continue again to perform at a higher level. Major aspects of adaptive leadership is emotional intelligence, and it's once more tied back to active listening. We as leaders need to understand the team's perspective. What's weighing on them? You got to be the umbrella in a sense and like shield the team from the BS that's raining down. And while, yeah, it's important that you're candid with the team, you're keeping them up to date on all things company related. You can't let everything that's impacting you impact them. So you want to be composed. You want to make sure that your actions will be what they will mirror. And so you want to be the calm you want your team to be. Having a high level of EI or emotional intelligence is proven to build trust. And when team members trust their leader, they're going to produce better results once again. And on that note, I think we've all had leaders in the past that maybe disparage other employees. I would highly recommend avoiding talking trash about anybody, because that individual may walk away thinking like, hey, I wonder if Patrick says similar things about me in other private settings. So make sure you stay upbeat and don't disparage other employees. Part of that awareness and emotional intelligence can also be tied to working hours. Like we have lives outside of this, and we've all probably had a ping or an alert hit our cell phone from a boss outside of normal business hours. And there's naturally an emotional response to it. Typically, it's a spike of anxiety, right? Like, Allison, why is my manager reaching out to me? It's 8:00 on a Friday. So I always recommend do your best to get your teams, your Slack messages amongst you and your squad down to zero, emails too. Don't leave them hanging. But if it's something that you can't get to, make sure that you're following up with them and sending an appropriate timeline, letting them know, hey, I'll get back to you in this sort of in a day or two, or this is what I have to look into. They're definitely going to appreciate that. And emotional intelligence, I think sometimes everybody thinks of it as like you got to be soft and cuddly, but you can't be afraid to have difficult conversations. I worked at one company that had the mantra, bad news doesn't age well. And I really adopted that when it came to certain topics within my group and within my team. You're going to have to eventually get a sense of like what needs to be addressed now versus what can maybe wait till the next week's meeting. Trust your gut though in relation to that. And so when there is something that is pressing and absolutely should be addressed, ask for 5 to 10 minutes. Ping them, say, hey, I just want to make sure we could talk about this. That way we can try to work towards a best path forward. Now, you're not going to be able to be an adaptive leader and have an effective team if you're not operating in a diverse and inclusive environment. It's been proven time and time again that diverse teams outperform non-diverse ones. Profitability, revenue, and all the reports from all of the consulting agencies that ran them showed that you need to be more diverse and inclusive. Because when you foster an environment that welcomes and respects different perspectives, it's going to create more innovation. It's going to increase collaboration and it will ultimately strengthen the group. I'd always encourage my team members, if they're interested or open to doing so, they're comfortable doing so, like share your cultural celebrations, share the things that you're most interested in. How can we incorporate those into team meetings? And if you do that, once again, you're building that trust and you're able to empower your employees. On the note of empowerment, I think delegation is another topic that a lot of early managers, like in their careers, can struggle with because you know how to do the job and you're good at it, right? And at the end of the day, you're going to say yes and take on more on your plate when in actuality, you need to be able to delegate to your team members and give them new opportunities, give them an opportunity to even fail, a safe space to fail so they can grow their careers. Look at their strengths. Like, what are they better at amongst their team members? What are the topics they're most knowledgeable about? And give them that opportunity to impart knowledge on the rest of the team. By trusting and empowering your employees, it'll likely lead to additional development and advancement. And when you're developing and advancing your employees, you will see those higher retention rates. I found one report that indicated employee development opportunities actually leads to 34% higher retention rates and a 15% higher employee engagement rate. So encourage those knowledge sharing events. Lead by example by sending out like relevant articles. Have the team attend webinars in a group and have a follow-up to see, like, what did you learn from this? Lean into what those team members are great at and have them conduct lunch and learns. Set up mentorship programs with senior recruiters or maybe an earlier careerist recruiter so they can pick somebody's brain in a more safe setting where they might be more comfortable to pose questions. And ultimately, I'm confident that if you combine all of these areas, your team will once again be getting those optimal results, perform at a high level. So having that foundation is great, but in order to really get the most from your team, you need to be adaptable. A one-size-fits-all management and communication style will not work. Kirsten did a great job of expanding on this earlier, so I'm not going to go too detailed into this, but the team's going to have those common goals. However, the drivers that individuals have in each instance is going to change. And what motivates one person versus another is going to be different. So get to know the drivers and try to quote unquote speak their language. So whatever message you're providing to the team member resonates better with them. I know there's multiple different communication models out there. I won't pretend like I'm a subject matter expert in them, but I was fortunate to work for an amazing chief people officer, a woman by the name of Melissa Moore, who was an expert on what was called the PPI or personality pattern inventory. And you've got a screenshot of it here. I highly recommend you to try to take a screenshot, take it down for future reference, because it breaks people down into 6 different personality styles: emotions, thoughts, opinions, reactions, reflections, actions, and it has their strengths, their psych needs, as well as, most importantly, their distress advertisements. I specifically highlight those distress advertisements because this, again, is something that if a team member is uncomfortable, if they're in distress, they're not going to be performing at the optimal level. You're not going to be getting their best results. And so when you see certain styles operating a certain way, you know you need to bring it back to their psychological needs, whatever they might be, and pull them aside and hit on those areas that are going to allow them to get back to where they're more comfortable and then operating within their strengths, whatever they might be. So that's a bit there. I appreciate everybody dealing with me as I'm getting over a bit of a cold, but there's been a lot of common themes throughout the presentations today. It's been really cool to see the common threads, the great takeaways. Just shout out to Hire Easy for putting this together. It's been a really great event so far and great work to all the speakers thus far. I'm looking forward to the rest of the content.